don't know how to make an intro anymore, so we're just gonna get into it. Hi. It's been a while. Not really, it's been like a week, but I feel like it's been a while because I am trying to distance myself from the internet, so I thought that I would make a little catch-up video. I asked for some questions or topics to talk about on Twitter and on Instagram, and I've divided all of these into categories, so if there's something that you really don't care about, then I'll leave the timestamps in the description so that you can skip around wherever you want to. A couple of weeks ago, I kind of like breezed through all of the Books Unbound podcasts that Ariel and Raylene run. I thought we could jump right into the book part of this first in Books Unbound style. So I'm going to talk about the last book I finished, which was The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. This is a chunky historical fiction book, or at least chunky for me anyway, because I don't normally read this stuff, following these two sisters during World War II in Nazi-occupied France, and just kind of how they deal with the war on two different fronts, I guess you could say. This has so much hype behind it. It has a really high rating on Goodreads, so I went into this like, I'm ready to be messed up, and instead I was really disappointed. Part of me thinks maybe it's because I don't normally pick up historical fiction, but this is by no means my first historical fiction book, now that I think about it. Then another part of me is wondering if maybe it was the expectations that I had, that maybe I had too high of an expectation. And then another part of me is like, why do I have such shit luck with popular books lately? I feel like there have been a couple of books lately that I have picked up and have been in the minority opinion for them, which is surprising for me because I'm not most of the time. I think I'm pretty easy to please. It's not hard to get into by any means. I think in terms of writing it's fairly accessible, and I was expecting for something to be so big and to be based in historical fiction that it was going to be a little bit harder for me to get into, but I sat down and I was just reading and I just kept going. In terms of the writing, there was something missing for me. I felt so detached and distant from the characters, and I couldn't get into them at all until maybe the last 100 pages I started to care about them a little bit more. And that's a lot, because this book is nearly 600 pages. I know that this is going to be made into a movie, and I think maybe I'll enjoy the story more there, but to me this read more like, you know, if you sit down with a relative and they tell you a story from long ago, and maybe they'll add like parts of the conversation in there and embellish it a little bit so that it actually sounds like a fleshed out story that you're reading instead of one that they're like recalling off the top of their head. So it felt a little bit more like that to me, even though it definitely did have descriptions of things that maybe your relatives would leave out if they were just recalling something for you. But that's overall how it was for me. I mean, if you look on Goodreads, the people who really didn't like this book were the ones that felt, or maybe they know because I'm not a historian, so I don't know shit. The ones that felt like there were historical inaccuracies, or that the novel wasn't as researched as they thought it should be, that doesn't matter to me. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be, but as somebody who is not a historian, you know, this doesn't affect me as much as it might for other people who know this part of history more than I would. I really thought I was gonna have more coherent thoughts on this and I was gonna be able to vocalize this a lot better, but Meg from Meg with Books did do a video where she was reading the highest rated books on her TBR, and she did read this, and we had similar feelings, I think. I'm curious to know though, if you read this book, whether or not you loved it or didn't like it as much like I did, whose perspective you were more interested in, because as much as I wanted to be more invested in Isabel's part of the story, because she seems to be more on like the more action-packed parts of this war, whereas Vienne is just at home and dealing with more like the domestic life during war times, I could not get into Isabel's parts at all. And it's partially because she frustrated the hell out of me. Isabel is very think first and deal with the consequences later, and maybe it's just because I have the hindsight of, you know, knowing what happens after the war and all of that, and what goes on during the war, that I was getting very frustrated because she's putting so many people in danger, and I was like, girl, stop! But it was really hard to read, and obviously she does grow through this, but it was too much for me, and I really was interested to see in what was going on back at home and the parts of the war that, not that they're not told, but I feel like most of the time we go straight into the action parts of it, and I wanted to know how it was affecting Vienne and the home life. So I was much more intrigued by her parts of the story, which I feel like that's weird. I know Meg felt the same, so let me know if you, like, who were you gravitating more towards? Whose story were you more intrigued by? I'm not immune to tears though, so I did cry at the end of it. I'm frustrated because I cried at the end because it drew from something real, you know? So while the end part was happening, I was thinking to myself that, you know, real people were affected and that things like this really did happen, and so that was what made me cry, and not so much the characters which was frustrating. But it was very interesting to read about like women's part in the war in many different ways that maybe we don't know about as much, and also to read about war in France, because I never read about World War II in France specifically. So that was interesting. A little frustrated because I really did want to read more of her work. I had my eye on Firefly Lane before I picked this up, and now I don't know if I want to go in that direction because me and this writing did not get along very well. It wasn't bad by any means, but it was lacking in something for me, or I felt like there was something missing for me personally. So what I'm currently reading is A Curse So Dark and Lonely because listen, I am in a very specific reading mood. I have two very specific reading moods, which I'll get into later. Actually, I don't really have a lot to say about this because I'm not very far into it. 104 pages in. I will say that I am having a good time reading it and that I have been like, not flying through the pages, but I haven't had to stop because I feel bored by any means. And I'm gonna get into that a little bit later. I structured this for a reason. So while we're still talking about books, one of the very specific things that I have been wanting to read is, and I'm lucky because while I was looking for books with this like theme, I found somebody who posted about it on Reddit, and it was like the exact specific thing that I was looking for, and I was like, what are the chances? I'm looking for books about toxic female friendships that blur the lines between platonic and romantic love. So that's what I want right now. So far, I have on my radar Social Creature by Tara Isabella Burton, and then a bunch of Megan Abbott's books, and I heard about Cat's Eye by Margaret Atwood, but I don't know if that has the like blurring the lines part, but that is on my radar. So if you have any suggestions, please let me know. Oh, one more that I read that I think fits under that category. Squad by Mariah McCarthy. I read that last year for Reading Rush, and yeah, that completely fits under there to me. But I need more of those. Any anticipated releases I've read and how were they if I did? I don't think there's been any yet. But Clap When You Land comes out today, the day that I'm filming this, and I am so excited for my pre-order to get in here so that I can sob for the rest of my life. Prettiest book cover of 2020. Honestly, Vicious Spirits by Kat Cho. I love that cover so much. If you could spend the day with your favorite booktubers after we can go outside and everything, who would it be? So this is an interesting question, but also one that I find super hard to answer because I am so insecure. It's not like I don't have a list of people that I would definitely love to hang with and like booktubers who I think would be really fun to like hang out with. I think that I'm like pretty awkward in person, and even if you don't see it, I definitely like feel that way. I've talked to a couple of people about this, but I like replay BookCon last year in my head 10,000 times, and every time I'm like, why am I like this? I am thoroughly intimidated by literally everybody. If I've had an interaction with you, no matter how small you think it was, just know that I am very intimidated by you. There are exceptions to this, being the people that I have hung out with at least more than once and like for a whole day, or you know, whatever the case may be. God, I want to see them again after I can finally leave here. Yeah, it's a really hard question. I don't know if I would be able to answer that like thoroughly. There is one person actually. Tam from... She changed her username. She changed her username, and I will put it on the screen right here. She was one of the first booktubers, or just like YouTubers in general, because I think she's like moving away from, you know, calling herself a booktuber right now, that I started watching. I knew right away that I had to subscribe to her because the intro to some of her videos was this song from, or like from the OST to Hanakimi, which is one of my favorite dramas ever. And when I heard it, I remember like going back the first time because I was like, there's no way that I heard that right. And also I'm pretty sure she's used a couple of like sound effects from Kingdom Hearts a couple times in videos, and I've been like, oh my god, excuse me. So yeah, I subscribed to her immediately right away. Recently she did this video where she was like dancing to old school K-pop, like first and second gen, which is my jam is second gen, and like trying to see if she still remembered the dances to it, and I had so much fun watching it. So yeah, I feel like we have similar interests in a way that I possibly don't have with other people on booktube. Even if we have like K-pop in common or like Kingdom Hearts in common, there's just few people that I feel like we are on the same like wavelength. So I think that I would like to hang out with her. Thoughts on GFriend's latest comeback? If you don't know, 여자친구, girlfriend, GFriend, they are my favorite third gen K-pop girl group, possibly my favorite like overall after Girls' Generation, of course. Their videos and their songs just make me feel, I can't explain it. Maybe in another video I'll try to explain it. But they usually have this very like sweet, I don't know how to explain it besides that, sweet and like innocent-ish vibe to their songs. And their songs to me sound like anime songs. Like you could put them as an anime intro or outro. But their last comeback, their most recent one, which I think was in February or March, kind of moved away from that image a bit, and it was more like girl crush vibes. So at first I was like, what's going on? But when I actually listened, I was like, wait, this is great. This is still, you know, like exactly what I love. I will admit, in particular, I prefer Crossroads to Labyrinth, just because when I listened to Crossroads for the first time and when I saw the music video, I felt the same feeling that hits me really, really, really hard with all of their other songs, full of emotion and all of this stuff. So I prefer Crossroads to Labyrinth. I do prefer their like more sweet concepts, I guess, but I love them anyway, so no complaints. Favorite Shiny album? That's kind of hard. I guess it would be their first one. Yeah, I think it would be their first one. Just the sound of that is probably one of my favorite sounds of theirs that's more like R&B-ish, but it also just has a lot of really sweet memories for me because that was obviously one of the first albums that I listened of theirs. Yeah, it would probably be the first one. Okay, so then I got some questions about movies and TV shows and just things in general that I've been watching recently. If this were any other time, I would not have a good answer for this because I am generally somebody who doesn't watch things very often. It takes a lot of work for me to sit down and actually get through an episode of something, much less binge through something. I can't do it. But I have been. Just a little bit though. Movies or TV shows I'm watching currently, or recent anime or manga that I've gotten through, and any on my list going forward that I'm gonna lump all together. So as for manga, I haven't really been reading much, even though I have a bunch checked out from the library that I obviously can't return right now. What I meant to be back on track with was My Hero. I'm so behind in the manga, like very far behind, still in season 1. But I do want to like catch up with the manga so that I can be on my boyfriend's level. As for my list going forward, I would like to continue with Fruits Basket, which I read in my Reading Rush vlog and embarrassingly cried a lot about volume 1. So if I could get my hands on volume 2, I would like to continue on with that series because it so far is just very sweet and something that my heart needs right now. Okay, so with anime, what's happening with me right now is that I've been in the mood to rewatch things. So right now, what I'm very, very, very slowly rewatching is Ouran High School Host Club. I know I watched this when I was in high school, but my memories of it are so vague. It's so vague. I should be at Cindy level where she can like name what episode any frame is in. But it's been really fun rewatching it and kind of reworking who my favorite characters are. I've always had a thing for the twins back in like high school, and that holds pretty well now, I think. Tamaki too, like I think I've always really liked his character, but this watch through he's a little higher than the twins even. Other than that analysis of my life correlating to Ouran High School Host Club, there hasn't really been much other anime that I've been watching other than my even slower rewatch of Inuyasha, which I think goes into my moods lately. I'm gonna get into that. Give me a second. Oh, I've also been watching Moomin, but that is a given at any time, which is appropriate because one of the questions was, who's your favorite Moomin character? And I don't know. I think that's really hard to choose. By default, I want to say Moomin because he reminds me a lot of myself as a kid with always wanting to go on adventures and stuff, and I think just the Sagittarius in me speaks to that. But I also really relate to Snufkin the more that I think about it. But I also really relate to like the sweet princessy parts of Florin or Snork Maiden. So yeah, it's really hard to choose. I don't know if I can, but God, I adore this show. Speaking of relating, favorite Studio Ghibli movie. As a kid, I would have said Spirited Away because that was the first Ghibli movie that I had seen, but lately I've been gravitating really hard towards Howl's Moving Castle. But also Kiki's Delivery Service is up there the more that I've watched the movie. So the first time I saw it was actually fairly recent, within the last like couple of years, and I saw it while I happened to be studying abroad. So it hit me really hard, in part because so when I was a kid, when I was a baby, I couldn't say my name, I couldn't say Nikki, and so I would call myself Kiki. So maybe that was me projecting, of course, but just the themes of being so far away from home and experiencing life the way that you want it for the first time, and that kind of like depression she goes through as an artist, all of it just hit me really hard. So I would say that Kiki is up there. My favorite movie probably is not Spirited Away anymore, but it's like a toss-up between Howl's Moving Castle and Kiki's Delivery Service. Favorite K-drama you recently watched, or any K-drama recommendations? Oh my god. Okay, I'm gonna try to contain myself. So I am always a couple of years late to Korean dramas and to like everything in general. I'm always a couple years late. A lot of my favorite dramas are like quote-unquote older ones, 2009 to 2015 or so. So my favorites are like To the Beautiful You, because it's a remake of my favorite like Japanese drama, You're Beautiful, Dream High season 1, My Love from the Stars, oh my god. Recently I've also been getting into the Hakgyo series. School 2013 specifically is the one that I started watching because that was recommended by Kat Cho, actually the author of Wicked Fox. That one is more based on actual like lives at school and what they deal with homework and teachers and exams and pressure and all of this stuff. But before that, I had seen School 2015, and that's one of my favorite dramas of all time. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, that's the one. That one is definitely a lot more dramatic. The plot of that one is so much, like dealing with twins and deception and just so much. That was one of the first dramas that I remember watching in a long time that made me feel so like I was scandalized every episode. I was gasping, I was reacting out loud, and I would go into work and I would tell one of my coworkers about it, and I was like, this is what happened in this week's episode, or the one that I just watched, and she was like, no, tell me more. That one is definitely like one of the first ones that I had seen, and I was just like, this is what my grandma and my aunt feel when they're watching the novelas. The one that I'm watching right now, because I kind of gave up on School 2013 because I was curious about some other ones for reasons, is W. I don't know why it's taken me so long to watch W. That came out in like 2016. I have only, I think, 3 episodes left as of the time of me filming this, and oh my god, it's so perfect. It is so very much me. Like it's a drama that I think was catered specifically to me and my tastes, and is the reason for the other reading mood that I've been in. So W is essentially about this woman who, she's a doctor and she is the daughter of a cartoonist, and he has this really famous manhwa, or like webcomic, called W. There's a lot to this, but essentially she gets pulled into that webcomic. I can't get into more from there because there's just so many layers to this thing. It very much appeals to my lifelong desire to be pulled into my favorite book or story, dealing with like creator versus creation and just all this drama. I am feeling the exact same things that I was feeling when I watched School 2015 for the first time. My mom hears me, I feel so bad for her, but she hears me gasping and screaming and being like, no, and how could this happen? And it's a wild ride. I am loving it. I have a new person to marry. W is what kind of got me into this mood of like wanting to read books that take place in another world, like somebody being transported from one world into another, like the regular world into another, I should say. Essentially isekai. I know that they may involve like being reborn into another world rather than being transported. I'm not super huge into this subgenre yet, so I don't really know. Inuyasha. Oh my god, no wonder I'm so into Inuyasha. So I have been drawn to some webtoons. I haven't started reading any yet that are falling into that category, and this is what I want with W. This is why I picked up A Curse So Dark and Lonely, because Harper, the main character, gets pulled into this other world that is like a fantasy world, and she's like, what the hell is going on? And you know, still is wondering how to get back to Washington DC, and it's really cool. It's like checking all the boxes for me so far. Tell us about your favorite Animal Crossing villager. Listen, my favorite villager of all time is Stitches. I love this bear so much. He's very cute. He's lazy. He's got a lazy personality type. He's just very sweet. But there's one other villager who I acquired naturally in the game, like I met on a Mystery Island tour, and I adore her. I didn't know who she was before this, and I love her. And that is this little tiny white hamster named Flurry. The first time I saw her on this island, it was love at first sight. She's so small and round, which is everything I love. I have been spoiling her a little bit. She is going around with this cute little jacket that is a matching one to one that I have, because I thought it would be cute if we matched, and I was right, it is very cute. Flurry is certainly up there, and then I have like a couple of other favorite villagers, but I've never had them in my town or island before, so I can't speak to that yet. My favorite Kingdom Hearts character, it would have to be Roxas, of course. He's my all-time fave because I relate to him so much, but Riku's up there for me. Some miscellaneous things to end off the video. Any hobbies you've picked up on recently? No! Actually, I kind of hope that I would, you know, pick up on something new, but that hasn't really happened, although I have gotten back into a hobby, and that is singing. I used to sing so often, every night, and like record covers with my friends, and was in these groups, and just, it was a lot, but I haven't really done it very recently. Now that I'm home, I'm like, well, why not? I've been getting back into it just a little bit, just for like stress relief. It's just been really nice. I'm so sorry to my neighbors though. Future tattoo ideas. I don't have like a concrete idea for my next Kingdom Hearts one, my 4th Kingdom Hearts one, but I know that I want to get another one. I have like vague ideas for tattoos that I want in the future, because it's been like 4 years since my last one, and I'm real sad about it. I'm gonna end on this question that I absolutely adore. What's an outfit you've been wanting to wear for a special occasion or for a simple day out? I love this because I have no sense of fashion whatsoever. I have always lived on like hand-me-downs, so I daydream about outfits that I would like to wear a lot. The thing that I most want to wear right now is a pretty sundress. I want to have a nice sundress and go out and have a picnic with my boyfriend. I think that would be really sweet. I don't care much about what it looks like. You know what? While I'm editing this, or before I edit this, I'm gonna put together an outfit in my head and I'll put it like right here, or at least a dress or something that I would like to wear. Okay, that is it for this catch up. Thank you so much for watching and for sending in some questions or topics to talk about. I'm hoping to make a recent reads video soon-ish, but the thing is that I don't really know how I want to structure that yet. I don't always want to talk about every single book that I read. I don't know, we'll see. But I've also been buying a lot of books recently, which they would be behind me normally, but I was too scared people would see them, so I moved them because they're all out of my comfort zone and I thought it would be a fun surprise. I guess. Like The Nightingale was one that I didn't tell anybody that I bought because I don't normally read this kind of stuff. Let me know how you've been doing. If you have answers to any of the questions that I answered today, let me know in the comments down below. I hope you're all staying safe and you're well, and I will see you next time. Bye.